ECHR,
Yep.
which is the European
Court of Human Rights.
And the Conservative Party leaders who are basically, one of them, I think, in fact, both of them may be saying they're going to abolish. I think Generic is saying...
Generic says we're going to pull out. Badenoch says no.
Yeah. Can you tell our gentle viewers a little bit about this? I'm assuming you do know something about it. I know a bit about it, but I'd be interested to know why it's a hot topic.
It's because in the Declaration for the Court of Human Rights, there's different sections there, and the one that messes up the most is the one that says people have the right to a family life. Which, like, well, do we have a life? Do we have a right for a family life? That's just so nebulous. Anyway, I don't even know why it was in. But then in the late 90s, Tony Blair introduced the Human Rights Act in this country, which basically put the European Court of Human Rights Act purely in our legislation. That then made, I mean, we keep blaming judges. It's not always a judge's fault. Judges are just obeying the law. If we want the law to change, the government's got to change it. But then the judges in our country then started implementing the European Court of Human Rights legislation in our court system, meaning they would look at the European courts and say that you can refer to if European court makes a judgment, our judges have to implement it in this country. Even though we've left the EU, we've still got to implement it. So we're being run by a foreign court. There's cases where we can't deport people because they'll claim that I won't have my right to a family life because you're going to send me back to Iran. My wife lives in this country, my children in this country. There was one famous case where they weren't going to deport him, and not all the evidence, but part of the evidence was he had a cat in this country, and he won't be able to take his cat with him. That's part of his family life. And it's just excuse after excuse after excuse. But Tony Blair put all that legislation on the books in this country. So the judges in this country have to implement these laws.
And there's an article I printed off, I think I sent it to you, and somebody's written 10 reasons why we need to leave the ECHR. Basically, I think what you're saying is the ECHR assigns rights to people and therefore won't deport them if they believe they have certain rights or human rights that mean they can't leave the country.
Sort of, because some countries do deport them. So what it does is it tells our courts what they can do and can't do. But because we're Great Britain, we tend to obey the law.
Yeah.
Other countries get told you can't do this, do that, and they just do it anyway.
So this individual's said here's 10 reasons why we need to leave the ECHR and replace this legal architecture with laws that prioritise the safety of British people and their children above all. And it's a bit of a trick, really, because it's not 10 reasons, it's 10 people and what they've done, which is horrific crimes. I'll just read a couple of them out. Ahmed Ali Alid, a Moroccan asylum seeker who was denied asylum in Italy, Germany, Spain, but allowed to stay in Britain for 3 years whilst his asylum claim was being processed. The Home Office only refused his asylum claim after he committed hideous crimes. In October last year, he murdered 70-year-old Terence Carney and attempted to murder his housemate, Javid Nouri, an Iranian asylum seeker, basically. Ali he was laughing at footage of Hamas October 7th attacks on Israel and keeping a knife. They gave him a warning and he was left to his own devices again, somehow. Days later, this guy who he killed, or tried to kill, the second guy, had reported his concerns to the police, but the police let the guy go. And then he went on to attack his housemate, and then he killed a pensioner who was going for a morning stroll, basically. So he was allowed to stay here for 3 years. Yeah. And this is all to do with ECHR, basically. Yeah. And after that time, he nearly killed a housemate and killed an innocent pensioner. Saki Hardy, an Afghan asylum seeker, staying in a government-funded hotel for asylum seekers, claiming he was at risk from the Taliban. Presumably that's why he was allowed to stay. Between December 22 and Jan 23, he twice raped a 12-year-old Albanian girl who who was staying in the same hotel. Afterwards, he tried to bribe her to keep quiet, basically. He was sentenced eventually to a minimum of 8 years in prison. Shahin Darvish Nareja, I can't pronounce these names, an Iranian failed asylum seeker whose permission to stay in the UK expired in 2015. His application, but he was allowed to stay. Jan 22, so he came here in 2015, was allowed to stay all that time. In Jan 22, he murdered Brenda Blaney, an 87-year-old woman who befriended him after they met in a restaurant. She invited him to live with her in her North Yorkshire house. He strangled and stabbed her to death, smashed her head on the kitchen floor, stabbed her in the chest and cut her throat. He was diagnosed as schizophrenic and now he's indefinitely retained. So that's just 3 of the 10 examples here. Those people all were allowed to stay in this country because of ECHR. And I'm guessing a lot of the immigrants who are in the hostels and stuff are allowed to remain for the same basis.
100%. That's why we have this problem. That's why we didn't have this problem 30 years ago. It's all because Tony Blair wrote this legislation into our laws. But it's not just the European Court of Human Rights we need to leave. We need to leave the UN Convention on Refugees. There's some other global legislation we need to leave. And we just need to pull out of all of it and then deport people and not allow people to step foot on this soil. So if we pick up migrants in a channel, they're taking, I don't want people dying in a channel, but we either send them back to France, push the boats to France, or get a French Coast Guard to pick them up. If they won't, which they probably won't, we take the people onto the Navy ship and we sail them to Ascension Island in the in the Atlantic, and we drop them off there. And then we give people choices. You can either go back where you came from or you stay here. But they never step foot on the UK. Now, we could stop this in a couple of weeks if we just had someone tough enough to want to stop it.
Yeah.
But we don't, because it's all, I might get in trouble with European Court. We've left Europe. Just leave the court now and walk away. We don't need any of it. I'd leave the WHO. I wouldn't leave the United Nations per se, but I would be spending no time at the United Nations. But I'd keep our seat on the Security Council. It might come in handy one day. But all these international organisations, I'd be pulling out of all of it.
It's it's really what Trump is going to be doing in America, isn't it? Is protectionism. Look after yourself and your own people.
Because that's what you're paid to do.
Yeah. I mean, one of the few things my father used to say to me, which made sense, and I wasn't a great fan of everything he said, but one of the few things he said that always resonated with me was charity begins at home. And I think there's a great truth to that. There's a charity begins at home in your own home, but it also begins in your own country as well. It begins with the people in that country and how they are treated and looked after before you start looking at other people. But we've inverted that, haven't we? We
have, because virtue signalling, and some people want a global socialist utopia. Most of the money we send abroad to help other people, it's wasted, it's stolen, it ends up funding wars. Most of the money on the first Live Aid with that Irish guy,
Bob Geldof.
I can't stand him, but him. Most of the money he raised that was sent to Ethiopia, they've tracked it. Nearly all of it was stolen and wasted. Nearly all of it.
We've come across your irrational hatred of Bob Geldof before.
Have we?
Yes. Why is it? Because of the Live Aid?
Oh no.
Just like
he's first of all, he's Irish.
He is Irish. Yes. He's not Liverpudlian.
No.
Irish,
so stop talking about the UK. He was anti-Brexit as a foreigner. He just annoys me.
But most.
Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers. I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.